Hello and welcome to the Scarlet Witch, Bewitched by WandaVision. This is episode 8, as I'm sure you guys all know. This is our WandaVision after show. There will be spoilers in this show, so if you have not watched episode 8 of WandaVision on Disney Plus yet, please go and do that before you come and watch this, because we don't want to ruin it for you. Liz, welcome back. Great to see you as always.
Yeah.
We've got, as always, a lot to talk about today, because there is so much happening, and yet, weirdly enough, one of the kind of calmer episodes of the show in a way.
In a way, yeah. A little departure from the sort of breakneck pace of the last few episodes. All the show titles are always really cool. They're all really like sort of apt as like little, TV references, and this episode was very aptly called Previously On. So,
yes.
And it very much is that. It's previously on Wanda's life and Agatha's life.
And it's so weird because, in a way, just before we get into it, what the show, this episode seemed to function as, was almost like a bottle episode that was an anti-bottle episode. So instead of showing you a bunch of clips of the shows as we'd seen them before, instead we got a bunch of things dipping into Wanda's life. So it's almost kind of like the expensive big budget version of a bottle episode. So I really kind of liked that. And indeed the constant deconstruction of television tropes and conceits that WandaVision is doing. So I'm kind of really happy with that. And also I noticed at the beginning of this, did I miss this? There was no snappy credit sequence. No, and it's not even called WandaVision this episode.
No theme song, nothing like that. It was a departure from the sitcom completely. Yeah, it was very much, set during, probably a very brief interaction between Wanda and Agatha.
And actually kind of reveals the truth behind a few of the mysteries in the earlier episodes of the show, and giving us a kind of honest version of what really happened, which is actually very different from what we've been presented before. So, I mean, we'll get into that. Right away, we're back at the end of episode 7 with Agatha having captured Wanda and led her into the basement. We haven't seen what's happened to Monica yet, which I was kind of hoping for. But instead, we kind of begin to answer some of the questions. Pietro being now, it seems, a product of Agatha's creation. Now, she seems to have transformed someone else. There's a lot of kind of indication that it might be the rabbit that she's kind of made into.
Obviously, if you know Agatha Harkness from the comics, the rabbit is not a rabbit. She has a black cat called Ebony.
Right.
And, we see this rabbit eat a bird in this episode. So, you might come to the conclusion that now where Wanda, as Agatha points out near the end of the episode, is a being of spontaneous creation, or capable of spontaneous creation, Agatha seems more able to sort of transfigure things. We walked through a bug that she transfigures into a bird. And if we're going to kind of, assume that Senior Scratchy is actually Ebony the cat, maybe Pietro is something or somebody else sort of transfigured into, the fake Pietro. So that's something we have yet to really discover.
And also kind of starts to answer the question as to why he's not the Pietro that we remember from Age of Ultron. Which is an interesting conceit and is something we've kind of been thinking about last couple of weeks or so. I just read today, actually, in a quick article, that apparently his hairstyle in the Halloween episode was a nod to Wolverine. like it was meant to be.
I mean, like, if you look at the really old comics, like that is what his hair looks like. Like the early versions of Quicksilver has that goofy hairstyle. So I didn't read anything about it into like it looking like Logan's hair, even though it kind of does, because it just looks like early goofy Quicksilver hair to me.
I kind of wondered if it was a bit of a nod to Feige, because there is that story that I absolutely love, where I think Feige was working for Richard Donner back when, or Lawrence Schuller Donner, back when the original X-Men movie was being made, and he was on the set trying to get the hair up as high as he could on
Wolverine, really?
Yeah. And he was just like, no, you've got to make it big, like it's got to be big. You've got to do it, which kind of just fits the sort of.
Oh yeah, I've never heard that story, but it's great.
Have you not? Oh right, I think
I love that Feige's such a like comics fanboy, like he really is, and that's that's always come through in the films.
Yeah, and I mean it's a great story and one of my favorites. But yeah, back to the episode. Agnes can't quite crack the mystery of Wanda, and decides to kind of take her on a journey back through her memories.
And before we go back on Wanda's journey, I just want to briefly, because before this confrontation between Wanda and Agatha, we very briefly get a glimpse of Agatha's past.
Yes, sorry. You're absolutely right. We do. Which was kind of an interesting thing. So it's set in your neck of the woods, funnily enough.
Yep. Massachusetts, yep. Well, trials happened, and it's sort of set during that time when the witch trials would be happening. So when you originally see her being sort of dragged to the stake and everything, you assume that it's like, she's about to be put on trial as a witch by the townsfolk, but when in reality it's her own coven who are putting her on trial and finding her guilty of wrongly using her witchcraft.
And it's an interesting sort of upturn on what we're used to seeing in those sort of scenes, because as you point out, usually it is the townsfolk burning a witch at stake, or men kind of burning supposed witches at stake. But here we get a group of women kind of completely pushing down on Agatha, and she takes she kind of gets her revenge there, and it also, it's an interesting thing for her power set, because she takes the power and the life force from all those women, including the most powerful of them, and that then kind of leads you to believe that that's maybe what she wants with Wanda, is she wants that power.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty likely that is kind of, or at least she wants to know, and she's quite straightforward about saying she at least wants to know how she did what she did. And you can only assume that she probably wants Wanda's power for herself.
And what's fascinating about it is, I mean, Agatha's power seems to come from witchcraft, which traditionally is an organic thing that's kind of the earth. It's got a natural origin, if you like. And Wanda's power, as we know, or as far as we knew up to this episode, was from the Mind. Is it the Mind Stone? You'll have to help me out here. Which stone?
Well, yeah, that was the Mind Stone, but we didn't know that up until this episode.
But we knew she was a part of Strucker's experiments, and they were using
the Mind Stone. Yeah.
So we could assume that.
It was never really clear whether Wanda had power before, involvement with Strucker or not. And in this episode, we definitively find out that she did.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing. I mean, and especially since the kind of the stones are cosmic, so that would almost sit at odds with the kind of natural power from the earth. And I wouldn't necessarily expect Agatha to be able to handle Wanda's powers, because they are, they're from a massively powerful source. So yeah, she starts taking her on this journey then, after revealing her own origin, into the kind of past of Wanda Maximoff, which we've never seen before. Yeah. It's all new stuff to us. And we see the beginnings in Sokovia when she's just a young child. And we finally get an answer as to why we've got this sitcom world, which, were you kind of expecting that from the beginning? Did you think it would be something
like that? Yeah, I kind of did, because, obviously she's been retreating into this fantasy, this happy little sitcom world. And that Wanda grew up in this grim, sort of war-torn country, and that she had, kind of a bleak childhood. So, you would have to assume that somewhere in there, she would have had a reason to sort of be gravitating toward these sitcoms and stuff. And so, I thought it was a really nice way to explain it, that her family would watch these sitcoms together, basically to kind of teach the kids English in a fun way, but also, to kind of do something as a family. So that was actually a really kind of sweet little explanation for, why she has created this world.
Yeah. And it kind of totally works on that sort of meta level that the show's been playing with since the beginning. And of course, we see the infamous the incident, shall we call it, that kind of ended the parents' life and gave Wanda and Pietro that sort of hatred of Tony Stark. But we're also kind of then, dragged forward to the point where she volunteers for Strucker's experiments. And that, one, it just goes to show how badly Hydra treated its volunteers. You think they would have at least given them like nice rooms? And
instead of dirty cell watching the Brady Bunch by herself.
But I was really surprised not to see Strucker, or the other Doctor from from Age of Ultron. Like, I honestly thought we'd get like a Thomas Kretschmann cameo, which I would have loved, because I love Thomas Kretschmann as an actor. He's terrific. And we see her first encounter with the stone, with the staff, and we're told that everyone who has kind of encountered this stone has not fared well. They've all ended up dead. And also, before that, we're not really told how they got out of the situation they're in with the Mortar, are we? We're kind of.
No, but we are told that that basically Wanda, they were actually safe the whole time, because Wanda, used a probability hex without really understanding that she was using her power. Yeah. She was protecting them from it. So they were never really in any danger. So they were basically just waiting to be rescued. But she, was all sort of unknowingly using the power that she already had as a witch. So that is, you have to assume why she actually was able to come into contact with the Mind Stone and not be killed by it.
And also, what's fascinating in that is we see a sort of vision of a figure that looks a lot like the comic version of the Scarlet Witch, which was I thought was great.
Really cool.
But you can then start seeing those things implanted in Wanda's mind. That like becomes the Halloween costume. But also, the only trouble with that was it made, and especially when you get towards the end. Actually, we'll talk about it towards the end. Sorry, I'm gonna skip. There's something that it kind of did spoil for me a little bit in retrospect. But and then we jump forward again. And we're given this kind of moment where she has to retrieve, or wants to retrieve, Vision's body.
Oh, well, I think you're skipping a whole scene there. Which was the scene that sort of set during Civil War between her and the Vision.
Right. And sorry, I have to say, guys, I'm absolutely exhausted at the moment, so my brain is going off in all directions.
Yeah,
so,
we're gonna kind of keep, kind of skip through the flashbacks. That one is worth talking about because it's sort of like the moment when she first really bonds with him, and the sort of seeds of their sort of love affair. And there's really a lovely little moment. She's sort of discussing her grief over losing her brother. And he says something to the effect of, grief is really just love, conquering all, basically, but it was just a sweet bonding moment between them that we never got to see during the movie because they kind of had to skip over a whole lot in the films. And so for us to really kind of buy their love story and everything, it was a nice moment. And watching Malcolm at the Middle at the same time, Yeah,
and of course it's a good moment because it's teaching Wanda about how to handle grief, and also she's teaching Vision about emotions and comedy and the way people will readily laugh at destruction, and that is true. Like people, people watch someone falling flat on their face falling off a skateboard. It's great, but you're not necessarily as enthralled by watching someone just skateboard. And there is something in that. And I think that says something about, when we go off and we watch all these movies and there's a ton of destruction, we would all rather kind of see that in a way. Although the Marvel movies are good at kind of countering a lot of that stuff. So I will say that for them. But yeah, it's a lovely moment between the two of them, as you point out. And then we move forward into Wanda and Vision's body. Now, we're given this event to play out one particular way, or we're given to expect that this will play out one particular way, and it doesn't.
Right. So it tells us something about Hayward, and he wants everyone to think, which is that Wanda stormed in there, stole the Vision's body, and brought it to the town. And so he is obviously lying to, Monica at the very least, and Wu and Darcy, about what his real intentions for the Vision's body really are, and also using Wanda as a scapegoat, which is probably why he's so desperate to kill her and take her out before she can say otherwise.
And also, not only that, in their interplay, that sort of scene they have together, I got the sense that he was goading her and goading her and you know what I mean? Like he was pushing her to kind of be as destructive as possible. And even the thing where he shows her the body, like he's got to know what that's going to do. And I think that was, he kind of wanted her to make a move there. Do you know what I mean? Like, and like his intentions just aren't, beyond what we see at the end of the episode, his intentions really aren't kind of clear, at least to me. Like which still makes me believe that he is someone other than he says he is.
Right. Very possible, and that's, there are some theories about that. We talked about one last week.
But are you thinking maybe a different character now that he could be?
I don't know,
There's a wonderful meme going around at the moment, which is images of Leonardo DiCaprio from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood pointing at a TV screen. And in every one of those pictures, it just says Mephisto, Mephisto, Mephisto. And it's like pictures of like all these different characters. I know. Yeah, that is, if there's no Mephisto at the end of this is going to be like, everybody's got it wrong. But yeah, because, thoughts that are going through my mind too. It's like, okay, well, so Pietro, is he Mephisto? Hayward, is he Mephisto? Is he Mephisto? I mean, if there's no Mephisto, I'm gonna, feel really let down by myself. But also with that, I mean, I've heard some crazy things like people are positing that Al Pacino might turn up as Mephisto. And this seems to be based entirely on the fact that Al Pacino played the devil once, and that he's actually said publicly that he'd love to do a Marvel movie. And
Right.
it's like, yeah, but I'm not really sure what the
casting really.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, wishful thinking.
But I'm not sure really what the point would be of someone having, of, you know, with all due respect, he's a great actor, but of Al Pacino's age, pop up as a major.
Probably too old to, you know, be hopping on board as Mephisto. Like, sorry, you know, you're great, I love you, but you know, so
I don't really see him doing a 9-picture deal like Chris Evans. You know, like props guys, you know, he's a good actor, you know, back in the day, probably could have worked out. Oh, I really do hope.
I haven't even thought about who I would fan cast as Mephisto, like, you know, actor wise.
I kind of hope it's Emma Caulfield, because, as I said last week, I think it would be an absolute waste of Emma Caulfield to have her turn up and do, you know, 10 lines.
I know, yeah, I agree. And like, you know, we've still never kind of gotten any resolution on her character.
But in a way, that kind of would be typical of a red herring, which is, you know, cast someone that's kind of, you know, real kind of geek, dream casting, and like then get her in there for a couple of lines, and then off. And it wouldn't be the first time they've done it, you know. So and also with Marvel, like no character goes without their moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no telling that in 4 years' time, Emma Caulfield couldn't be back in something else.
Right, exactly.
You know. But yeah, I mean, this moment goes down completely differently. Wanda doesn't steal the body. She, you know, she's upset, sure, but she kind of heads away. But and also, I found Hayward's kind of character particularly cruel in that scene, like just particularly,
yeah, very, very
super mean.
And it's what kind of pushes her right over the edge.
And she heads off to, or she gets a note, doesn't she? Which seems to be Vision's living will.
Well, it's like the deed to the deed to the property.
Yeah, which is sorry, and the thing he says there is you know, grow old here, which is I kind of I really liked.
Yeah, it says to grow old in, and it's got a heart, and it says V, and you know, it's right over the, you know, sort of basically, you know, empty property that she ends up creating the house in.
And in a run-down town as well. Like you forget how, like, you kind of expected Westview to be like a more prosperous place originally, but instead what you get is this very dilapidated town. You know, people are obviously out of work, businesses are closing down, and that all speaks to me kind of a theme of kind of resurrection, which is obviously running throughout the show. And we see Wanda kind of have her moment. She has a breakdown. It's not revealed whether or not Agatha was already there though.
No, no,
like,
yeah, there's still a few things that, you know, kind of niggle with Agatha and how she became involved.
Yeah,
because Wanda goes there, you know, she has the deed from the Vision, but was that we never see him give that to her? Was it given to her by somebody else? Was she sent there by somebody else? We're still, you know, that's still not clear. Was Agatha somehow, you know, sort of, did she point Wanda in the direction of the town? Is she the one who gave her the deed? Or could it have been somebody else? Was it just coincidence that she wound up there and Agatha happened upon her? Or had Agatha kind of had her eye on Wanda anyway?
Yeah. And actually, we'll do, if we got time, we'll do a quick rundown of the sort of unanswered questions that we've still got left before episode 9 hits next week. And you know, all through this, what's interesting is although initially Agatha stops Wanda from sort of performing any magic or powering up or anything like that, she now seems to have kind of stepped back and let her kind of go free in a way. You know, we see Wanda's initial takeover of the town where she transforms it into the sort of 1950s. Oh, the obviously most fascinating thing about that, oh my God, is that Wanda creates Vision.
Yes, well, that is a huge question answered. So she not only doesn't steal the Vision's body, but she creates her own Vision, you know, for the town, you know, so the reason that Vision, every time he tries to leave the hex, starts to come apart is because he is created and exists within the hex. Probably the same as her children, you would have to assume. So they probably can only exist inside the inside the hex, and that's why Wanda is so protective of the hex. Yeah.
So subconsciously, she knows that's going to happen if she goes outside, and of course, all the time she's asking for Tommy and Billy. We don't know where they are or what's happened to them. We do hear them kind of crying off in the background, which is it must be weird because by now we kind of know as an audience that they've got to be completely artificial, that they're not real. So it's just like, I wonder if that emotional attachment on the part of the audience stays. Like, do we still care if they're kind of, kind of all right or not? Because
I mean, and that's very keeping in the existence of the kids in the comics, really. You know, they were kind of artificially created, I guess you could say, from magic to begin with. And basically when the magic is taken away, they cease to exist. So, but Wanda's attachment to them is no less real than if they were just, born in the traditional sense, and like they are her children as far as she is concerned, and she would do anything to protect them.
Yeah, and it's kind of a strange thing though, because surely she kind of must be, I mean, I don't know, I'll be interested to see how they're going to carry forward their story, if at all, kind of post this.
Well, I mean, again, in keeping with the comics, they definitely do continue their story. And to me, there's no way they're just gonna like leave those kids. I mean, we'll save this for another time, I guess, when they do a Young Avengers movie, but I don't think we can last those kids.
This is the show that committed the cardinal sin and killed the dog. So like nothing would surprise me at this point. But, when we get to the end of this episode, or at least the sort of what we think is going to be some kind of showdown between Agatha and Wanda, we don't get that. What Agatha seems to be doing, to my mind, is trying to align Wanda with the kind of true power behind her. And she calls her the Scarlet Witch.
And that's the first time we get to hear that. Which was pretty cool.
Here's the problem for me that created was it makes that moment, and it was a clunky moment, to be honest, way back in like episode 4 or 5, when they're all in the tent, the sword tent, and they're having the briefing about Wanda and her past. And Hayward goes, "Oh, doesn't she have one of those kind of superhero nicknames?" And it was just like that actually makes that moment really kind of clunky, because it feels like, oh, we're just dropping that in here so we can drop that later on here. And it's just like, that's really clunky.
Oh, I don't know. Like as soon as she said it, I was like, woo, like, hold up this stuff. Like, I was just like, oh yeah, Scarlet Witch. Great. So yeah, no, didn't bother me at all. Yeah, and
given the MCU history, I kind of don't need them to have their superhero names.
Whatever.
I've got so used to calling her I've got so used to calling her Wanda now. It's
Well,
just
you
like,
can call her Wanda, that's fine. But now she's got her proper superhero moniker.
yeah, I don't know. I could have done without it, but I did kind of like it, and I'll be interested to find out if somehow the name the Scarlet Witch is something that comes from a sort of mythological place within the context of Agatha's story, because there is a lot of kind of color coding that goes on, like Agatha's colors are all kind of this sort of
Purple.
rich purple, yeah, which reminds me a lot of like Black Panther and the vibranium and stuff like that. So again, I'd be interested to see if there's any connection there. And of course, which would then connect her powers to a more cosmic origin and blah 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 blah. I don't know. My mind's going off on this, so I'd be curious to see what happens. And we're kind of left hanging there because we then jump to the credits. Now, I was expecting a bit more out of this episode. There were rumors that we were going to get, like, the final 3 episodes would be something like an hour long each. I'm glad we didn't get that. But we're then into a sort of mid-credits teaser where we see what happened really to the Vision's body. Now, this does have some comics history.
Yeah.
Which do you know the
so like, I mean, in a nutshell, there has been, like, in the West Coast Avengers, there was a storyline in which we got like a white Vision, so as you can see, like, all the color's been stripped away from him, and in that comic, like, not only, so he, basically he was like, sort of dismantled, brought offline, and put back together again. And the sort of new configuration of the Vision, came back with all of Vision's powers, but none of his memories or humanity. So
right.
This like emotionless robot, basically, who didn't remember Wanda, didn't remember their kids, and was basically just like a shell of the Vision, but with all the power.
Right.
So it seems that what they've brought back, what Hayward has brought back, is that. So you would kind of have to theorize that in the next episode, if there's going to be some big showdown, it seems very likely there's going to be like a Vision versus Vision kind of showdown, or at least that's what I'm hoping for.
But also, yeah, I mean, that could be fascinating. Or Wanda versus Vision, or I don't know. But what it seems to start to say to me now is that in a way there is no big bad, which I think Dan Bussey kind of pointed out last week when we were talking about the kind of viewers' comments, that there is no big bad as such. It's just a bunch of people with these agendas that don't necessarily coalesce, but there's no real kind of grand evil at work.
Right, like Mephisto, everyone's still like, but
Liz, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. Are you Mephisto? Like, you could just tell me now. We've got 1 episode to go.
I'll never tell.
Yeah.
But if you would like to give me your soul,
yeah,
I could probably work something out.
That over years ago when we started doing podcasts, Liz. Maybe that was just a down payment. Now, but I just now wonder if it is going to be a bunch of people with these different kind of agendas that aren't necessarily all good, but aren't necessarily evil, which is it's a kind of thing I found with Marvel's bad guys, is they're very good at kind of contextualize them on an emotional level, where they kind of go, oh yeah, they're bad, but they're not. Are they really bad? Well, no, because they've got this point of view, and it's just like there's very few true hardcore proper villains in Marvel, and of course, would it make for good entertainment if there were? I'm not so sure. I mean, because these days we want our villains to be more
nuanced, complicated. Yeah. You know, you want to, you want to feel like you understand why they're doing what they're doing. So
I just really want one of the bad guys just once to turn around and go, "Oh, I just wanted the money." I just really needed the cash.
Yeah, I mean, that's plenty of time for that, Paul. I mean, we've only got about 8 million Marvel movies to go, and I'm there for all of them. So
I'm having a pool put in next week, and I want it to be an indoor pool rather than an outdoor one. So I just really needed the money. But yeah, I don't know what we're going to get. Even like looking ahead to Falcon and Winter Soldier, Zemo seems to have a very kind of now interesting worldview, which I don't know if you've seen any more of the they keep like dropping clips. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I thought Zemo was one of the best.
Oh yeah,
villains, I think, and like he's got really understandable motives, and
actually someone you felt genuine remorse for. Like you really did feel.
Yeah, and I'm so excited they brought him back. Like I couldn't be more thrilled that they're bringing him back for this show in particular. But we'll talk about that when we get to that show.
So. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. It's kind of still all up in the air, and my metaphysical hat gets doffed at the writers and creators of this show for keeping it mysterious.
Yeah, right to the end.
Right to the very end, and I am so excited to see the final episode. I do have a couple of things from our viewers. Dan Bussey, who has messaged in again, just about the most recent episode. He feels that Agatha wants a partner in crime. Oh no, sorry, that was me talking back to Dan. Sorry. So, as he said, he thinks there is no real big bad. Hayward is looking like the antagonist, but he kind of only seems to be the antagonist down to opportunity in terms of creating that sentient weapon. And Agatha does just seem curious. He's also said that he's heard that Dick Van Dyke might pop up in the next episode.
Wow.
So, Liz, could Dick Van Dyke be Mephisto?
Dick Van Dyke could be Mephisto.
Talk about casting someone incredibly old.
Could be the Bunny Rabbit. Could be Dick Van Dyke. Could be anyone.
Anyone who's listening, watching now, please drop in the comments who you think Mephisto might be. The wilder your theory, the more we want to hear it, and we will definitely be talking about it next week. Yeah, and of course, I also heard from a mutual friend of ours, Derek, who we used to work with at Orbital, who said that he thinks it's not really a theory about the show and the storyline of the show as such, but what he thinks the aftermath of the show will be. Now, he feels that because we're kind of in New Jersey, that the Hex might actually give rise to giving Kamala Khan her powers for Miss Marvel, which we know is a show that's coming and has been cast, and they are filming now. So it could indeed turn out to be that. And actually, that's a fascinating thing.
Yeah, that would be a really cool way to see her get her powers, because obviously they bend the rules, with the cinematic universe. I mean, even this episode being a prime example of how much they changed, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver's origin, with the parents and everything like that. So if they want to, make the Hex directly responsible for Kamala to get her powers, that would be like a cool little tweak, and that would be a really neat, a neat way of explaining something that we know is going to happen. So I like it. That is very cool, and yeah, I would like to see after effects of the Hex, and of WandaVision. We already know there could be some stuff with the multiverse that ripples out of this, but something as small as like, okay, and then also this, teenage girl in New Jersey all of a sudden gets powers.
Yeah, like it could just as be that, because we don't know how wide. We've seen the Hex go in one direction, expansion wise. We haven't seen what happens on the other side of town when it does that necessarily. So that might be something we can pick up on. And of course, Agatha is still kind of completely mystified as to how Wanda has managed to control such a large area, given her power set. So that's fascinating. That still needs answering. So the questions I think that still need answering. Who is that goddamn aerospace engineer?
I don't know. I'm gonna hold your breath for that one. I mean, yeah.
Who is the goddamn witness protection person they were looking for in the first place?
Could not say.
I'm beginning to wonder if the witness protection person they were looking for was Wanda, in a way.
I think that there's every chance that Hayward might have been misleading them, because isn't he the one? Or, well, I'm not even sure if it was. Like, he's the one who told Monica that there was a witness protection person that they needed to sort of go in and find, but I don't know, because it sort of came from Wu as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm still unsettled by the fact that when they were sort of drawing up the pictures of all the people in the town and their real identities, we still never saw Dottie. So I'm still not giving up on Dottie.
Yeah,
there's something.
Another question. Who is Mephisto?
So that's still up in the air.
Who is Mephisto?
Pietro, we have not seen what happened, where we left off with Pietro and Monica.
Mm-hmm.
They were sort of convening at the back of Agatha's house. So, I don't know if there's already been some kind of showdown between them, but we still don't really have firm answers about who Pietro really is.
Brilliant, yeah. So Monica and Pietro, aerospace guy, witness protection guy, Dottie. Who is Mephisto, and is Mephisto in the show? That's what I want to know. Is there ever going to be a Mephisto? Is Liz Mephisto? That's another one we might get an answer to next week. Yeah, there's still a bunch of stuff. What is Hayward's grand plan in the end? Is Hayward Ultron? That's the one I want. I am so desperate for Ultron to come back.
Hey, I mean, it's reasonable to assume that there could be a reemergence of Ultron. I mean, it's pretty hard to kill.
Definitely. But I mean, I'm just, someone was saying they can't remember the last time they're this excited for a bit of television, and it was just like, yeah, I'm completely down with that. I'm really.
White Vision be Ultron.
Oh yeah, okay.
I mean, they brought him back. Ultron was part of him to begin with. That's
interesting. Or it would be good if at the end, White Vision, somehow, whatever battle White Vision gets himself into, whether it's with Wanda or Agatha or with anyone, or Wanda's version of the Vision, then somehow jogs the Ultron programming, to the surface. That might be kind of interesting. Who knows? It's been an exciting kind of 8 weeks of speculation. Yeah. It's really good. It's good fun, and I hope you guys watching will and listening indeed to for the podcast, guys. You'll kind of drop us a line and let us know what you think it's going to be by the end, because I'm just kind of really excited to find out now. You've got a week. You've got 6 days, really, guys, to come at us with some answers before the show drops on Friday. So get some answers to us by midnight Thursday. We'll see.
We'll read about Probably have to do it before we start the episode properly, because by then we'll actually have the answers. But
I'm really hoping that you guys will kind of engage with this and give us a shout. I'm really grateful for all the messages I've got from listeners and new viewers and things who have kind of picked up on the new video shows. Thank you very much for doing that. And we've got a couple of new patrons. So I really want to say hello to you guys. Thank you for becoming patrons of the Comic Rush. It is one of the ways that we're able to keep doing this stuff. We'd love some more people to join you, so we can expand and do more and more things, because we're really enjoying doing this and the articles and the website and all of that. But you're all part of it. Please, talk to me. Give me some ideas of what you want to see, and what would you like to see Liz and I, or myself and Nikki, or myself and Keith tackle next. Speaking of video shows, we've got a brand new video show on this very channel right now. It's called The Comic Touch, and that is myself and Gemma Hartshorn, who works at Traveling Man in York, just kind of doing a quick chat about comics, just the comics that Gemma's taking a look at and the comics that I'm taking a look at the moment. So the first episode is up now. Sorry, there were a few sound issues which we should get fixed for next week, but give that a look. Let me know what you think of that show. Let us know what you think of the comics. Please be nice with your comments. Try and hold back from any vitriol. But let us know if you pick up any of the comics that we talk about and what you thought of them. But we're going to do that for a few weeks and see how that goes. So Gemma's very kindly given up a bit of her time to come and do that. And it's really nice to have her on the team. Tomorrow, there should be some brand new stuff going into the web store. So you can actually pick some comics up from us. Take a look tomorrow. Should be some great stuff going in. Should be in by the afternoon, by however long it takes me to get them all logged on. But there's some great comics coming up. I've got a great big pile of comics to put in the web store here. Do think about joining the Patreon, which is up there at the top, and there is a link down below. You can follow Liz on Twitter. There's a link for that down below. You can follow me on Twitter. There's a link for that. Follow the Comic Crush. Go to the website. Take a look at the stuff. Obviously, we just dropped the big bit of news, which is J.J. Abrams and Ta-Nehisi Coates working on a Superman movie, a new Superman movie. I'm quite excited to see that, Liz. I'm really curious to see what that combination of creators does.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. I mean, both of these guys are big sort of geeks. They, love the comic. They, obviously love the character. And I'm very curious to see what their collaboration is going to produce.
Yeah, I'm really, really kind of endlessly fascinated by these kind of collaborations that are coming now. J.J. Abrams has actually written comics. He wrote a Spider-Man series called Bloodline last year. It kind of got delayed by COVID and a few other things. But that was 5 issues last year, I think, or the year before, which he wrote with his son. A lot of vitriol gets thrown J.J. Abrams' way because, how dare he help his kid write comics. I
liked it.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that came out of that was insane. And also a lot of vitriol because, a lot of comics writers seem to think that J.J. Abrams was taking a job away from them. I got some news for you guys. He probably is.
I do like Abrams, and I think he's very good at sort of, creating a world that's interesting, that kind of has its own conceits and what have you. So I expect from him a really kind of big fun action movie, if we're going to have a first Superman movie coming from him. And something that he kind of puts his little stamp on. He's very good at creating sort of mysteries and a good jumping on point for hopefully what's going to be more than one Superman movie.
Sure. And I think that, I don't know enough about Ta-Nehisi Coates' work. I've not read his novels, and I haven't read too many of his comics, unfortunately, because, as I've stated many times, I'm not really a big Marvel reader. At some point, I'm sure I will get to them. But all the feedback I've got from people who've read his comics are that they're great. And
yeah, I've read a bunch of his Black Panther, and it was really good. I haven't read his Cap. He's been writing for a while, and I haven't read that. So I would like to brush up on it, and because I do, I love my Cap. I love my Cap comics, but can't read everything all the time. So there'll be one day where I binge it all. So I was happy to see his name involved. I think that's he's got a solid geeky background. He's a good writer. So I want to see what that collaboration generates.
Yeah, I'm really, really kind of curious to see what they do. I think Abrams is very good at taking something old and making it new again and reinterpreting. He kind of did it with Star Wars. He did it with Star Trek. He's done it with genres like the monster movie, like Cloverfield and things like that. Although, obviously he didn't direct all those projects. For me, he started the journey of making the Mission Impossible films my favorite goddamn film franchise, in years. And I, all respect to the MCU, but the films I really do get excited about these days, and the most excited about are, the Mission Impossible movies.
Mission Impossible movies have been amazing. Particularly, I think the last two were just really, really good.
And I know he's involved as a producer then, but Mission Impossible 3 I absolutely loved. I know there's going to be a lot of vitriol about that, like a lot of people didn't, but anyway, we'll wait and see what comes. We have gone way over the time.
I know, yeah.
Sorry, guys, lots to talk about this week. But we'll see you all next week for the final episode. And we'll have a little surprise about another thing that's coming just after the final episode, hopefully for you next week. So do stay tuned. We'll see you all again. Catch you next time on The Crush. Liz, goodbye. Thank you very much for dropping by once again and doing this. It's been a ride. We'll see what happens next week. Liz is Mephisto. Remember, I said it. She's Mephisto. Catch you later, guys. Bye-bye.